Dr. Paul, I always laugh when I hear the word truther myself. There are so many things that are extraordinarily curious about the 9/11 event that have nothing to do with conspiracy theory. Chief among them, in my view, is President Bush, the entire administration, Condoleezza Rice, assuring the American people over and over again that no one could have foreseen airplanes being flown into buildings or airplanes being used as weapons. And yet, only weeks before at the G8 summit, they had taken the extraordinary measure of putting anti-aircraft missile batteries around the site. And President Bush himself, and I believe Condoleezza Rice, spent the night on the aircraft carrier, the Enterprise, because of the threat of attack by airplanes. For those who believe that there is some conspiracy theory involved in questioning the official reports, the co-chairman, I mean, we're talking about conventional politicians like Thomas Keane and Lee Hamilton, the co-chairman of the 9/11 Commission themselves accused the CIA of trying to subvert the investigation somehow. We now know that the CIA spied on Senate staffers years later on their investigation into activities of the CIA. So what is the big mystery here?
Yes, I think more and more Americans are starting to realize this. But I remember my immediate reaction. Of course, I was in D.C. on 9/11, and it was total chaos. And the main goal for most of us was to get out of D.C. because not much was going to happen for a while before Congress gets organized again. But there was no flights going out for a couple of days. And finally, I believe it would be 3 or 4 days later, we were allowed to fly out, but not out of D.C. I had to go to Baltimore. And believe me, it was very, very chaotic. But at the same time, we heard news very early on that all Saudi Arabians had already left town. They got on their private jets and they were shooed out of town and flown back home and allowed to go back home. And many of those individuals that went back to Saudi Arabia, guess what? Their last name had the name of bin Laden. Never quizzed one time by the FBI. And I think that although that very secret part of the report that the members of Congress can read but not expose, there's been hints. And matter of fact, I even think that Hamilton or somebody else on the commission mentioned that one of the big issues is Saudi Arabia and try to get in compensation and believing that there's material in there that protected Saudi Arabia. But, you know, the other thing that was well known I don't know how well it came out in the reports, but most of us heard about these pilots, so-called pilots training to land airplanes, to fly them, but not learn how to land them and take off and all this. And one FBI agent, I think he went like 25 or 30 times, issued reports and saying there's something weird going on with these guys on learning how to not fly an airplane. And so there was the material there. I believe that if we ever get the full truth, we'll find out that our government had it in the records on exactly what the plans were, at least close to it. And you've already mentioned that they had been warned that something was going to happen. Now, does that prove the fact that our president and others actually sat down and laid the plans and did this? I don't think it does. But I think what it does show is that one of the reasons why they want to cover up is because they don't want to say, you know, the FBI and the CIA we were at the time spending $40 billion a year to spy on everybody to make us safe and secure. And therefore, they really messed up, so they had to hide that. But the consequence of this, not only hiding the information, but just think of the tragedy on our civil liberties here at home and the fighting of all the wars in the Middle East and the attack on our civil liberties ever since that time. So our own government did more harm to the liberties of the American people than, bin Laden did. He was a monster in himself, but that was minor compared to the damage done financially that people have died. And here we are, 24 years, and we're still fighting a war in a pretense that it had something to do, with 9/11, especially the escalation of the war in 2002 and 2003. So it is a real tragedy, and about all we can do right now is do our very best to get the information out, because I think it's very, very healthy that the American people don't buy into these commissions, that they don't, accept everything they said in the Kennedy Commission, and they haven't said everything about the one on torture as well as Martin Luther King. And right now, there's a growing number. And one of the groups that are most interested in getting these pages out are members of the families of the individuals that were killed. So it isn't like finding the truth is something terrible. It's some of the people who suffered the most from the tragedy of 9/11.